What would you do if your parents' killer asked for forgiveness? A tale of karma and redemption. If a street child, poor, uneducated, without a single certificate, claimed he could heal your daughter, a girl fully paralyzed with no hope of recovery, would you believe him? Or would you wave him off, call him a lunatic or a scammer, and return to your life of despair, dressed in expensive suits and buried under endless medical bills? That afternoon, the city's central square looked like a living painting. Street music blended with the sound of cotton candy carts, children's laughter, and the fluttering wings of pigeons. But in a forgotten corner of the square, where the sunlight no longer reached, sat a man in silence, as if the world around him was merely a distant stage he no longer belonged to. That man was Leandro Salazar, the one once called the real estate king of South America. Beside him sat his daughter, little Isabella. Just 9 years old, her dreams had been crushed by a tragic accident. Her legs no longer felt anything, and her eyes, once sparkling like a morning lake, had grown dim, as if surrendering to fate. Whether in a worn-out doll or a wheelchair, pain clung to her like a scar that wouldn't heal. Leandro had traveled the world, spending millions trying to cure her, from top doctors in Germany and Japan to stem cell experts in Switzerland. And yet, the answer was always the same: accept the truth. But something in a father's heart never fully accepts that truth, not even when reason is exhausted. "It's late, Isa. Let's go home," Leandro whispered, glancing at his gold-plated watch. The girl simply nodded, no complaints, no resistance. She had long stopped expecting anything different. But just then, as they began to leave the square, destiny, or perhaps karma, stepped into their lives. A boy appeared. No one knew where he came from. Hair tangled, bare feet dusty, clothes torn, he had nothing in his hands except his eyes. And those eyes, clear, yet strangely still, seemed to have seen more than one lifetime. He weaved through the crowd like water, stopping in front of Leandro and Isabella. He didn't hold out his hand for money. He didn't offer gum or a shoe shine. He simply spoke, calmly and firmly. "Sir, I can help your daughter walk again." Every sound seemed to vanish in that instant. Leandro was stunned. Anger, disbelief, pain, and a buried sense of hope all surged inside him. Part of him wanted to yell, to bark, get lost. But in that same moment, he saw his daughter's eyes. They had lit up for the first time in years with the glow of a child believing in a miracle, even if it was a fragile dream. Not belief in medicine. Not belief in money. But a pure kind of faith, the kind that only those who've reached the end of hope can truly grasp. Leandro clenched his jaw, fists tightening. "What's your name?" he asked hoarsely. "My name is Tomasz." "And what exactly do you plan to do?" The boy smiled gently, with no arrogance. "First, I'll help her remember what it feels like to walk in her mind. Then, the body will follow." Leandro laughed, half in mockery, half in pain. But then he looked at his daughter, saw her grip Tomasz's hand and nod. And he, the man who once made entire corporations tremble with a glance, nodded. 1 hour, Tomasz. Just 1 hour. They say everything in life happens for a reason. But when destiny walks into your life in the form of a street child, do you have the courage to open your heart? Or do you slam the door shut, just because it isn't wrapped in gold or certified by a license? Now, in a world that no longer believes in miracles, a boy was about to begin what many would call impossible. 1 hour, simple in theory, but for Leandro, it was a gamble. Not with money, he had more than enough of that, but with belief. And belief, after years of erosion by false promises, prestigious doctors, and his own helplessness, had become more rare than diamonds. Tomasz led Isabella to a jacaranda tree, where soft purple light filtered through its canopy. He knelt and began arranging broken branches and pebbles, as if painting an invisible picture on the earth. Every motion was slow and deliberate, like a monk performing a sacred rite amid the chaos of life. Leandro stood a few steps back, suspicious eyes watching. Every strange gesture made him want to end it all. But he couldn't, not because he believed, but because of his daughter's eyes. That look made retreat impossible. Tomasz leaned toward Isabella and asked in a breeze-like whisper, "Do you remember the last time you ran?" She froze. Her lips quivered. Then, eyes closed, tears slipped out unnoticed. "Yes, it was in the rain. There was a big puddle, I jumped over it, and I laughed." Tomasz handed her a smooth, black stone. "Hold this. Not because it's magic, but because when you touch it, you'll remember who you are. Not the girl in the wheelchair. The girl who once flew." Leandro stepped forward, voice grating, "What kind of scam is this? Did you learn street hypnosis? I've seen 100 like you, empty hands, full of words." Tomasz didn't reply. He just looked at Isabella and gently closed his eyes. And then, the miracle began. No glowing light. No divine music. Everything stayed the same, leaves falling, breeze blowing, people passing by unaware. But in that stillness, a paralyzed girl began to see herself run. Soft grass underfoot. Wind in my eyes. I laughed. Daddy ran behind me. Tomasz whispered as if casting a spell only her soul could hear. "You're not trapped. No wheelchair. No fear. Just you and legs that long to touch the world." Isabella gripped the stone tighter. Tears still flowed, but her lips trembled, not in pain, but in awakening. "I see it. I can feel my legs." Leandro was stunned. He rushed forward, kneeling beside her, touching her leg. "What did you say?" She opened her eyes, red from crying, but bright with light. "I can feel my feet, Daddy. I really can." It lasted only a moment, like the wings of a dragonfly brushing the water. But to Leandro, it felt like the earth itself shifted. No doctor in 3 years had brought his daughter to say those words. Tomasz stood. He didn't gloat. Didn't smile in victory. He simply bowed his head, hands behind his back, like a student who had just completed his first test in life. "I don't understand," Leandro whispered. "What did you do?" "Nothing she couldn't do herself. I just helped her remember who she is." Leandro was silent, chest heavy with tangled emotions, hope, doubt, shame, and the sting of helplessness shattered by a barefoot boy. "Will you come again tomorrow?" Isabella asked, her voice soft as breath. Tomasz nodded. Leandro looked up. The sunlight still filtered through the purple leaves. For the first time in years, he felt its warmth touch him. "You'll have another hour tomorrow, Tomasz. Just one more." Tomasz bowed slightly, as if he already knew the answer. As the boy walked away into the crowd, Leandro watched him with a strange feeling. This boy hadn't come just to heal. He came to change everything. When sunset bathed the old rooftops in crimson and stretched long shadows across the square, Leandro didn't go home immediately. He sat in his car, eyes lost in thought, like a man who'd just stepped out of a dream he couldn't explain. Isabella was asleep, her small face resting on his shoulder, still clutching the black stone Tomasz had given her. A stone worthless to the world, yet it had made his daughter smile. How long had it been since he'd seen that smile? A smile not bought by money or sweet doctorly lies, but a smile born from life itself. When they got home, after laying his daughter gently in bed, Leandro returned to his office. He didn't turn on the light. In the darkness, he opened his laptop and typed a single name, Tomasz. No last name. No medical file. No school. No ID. The boy seemed to have come from nowhere. But Leandro Salazar wasn't one to give up easily. He had tools others didn't: one call, one inquiry, one urgent search backed by power and influence. Within an hour, a report flashed on the screen. Tomasz Arrieta, approximately 8 years old. Orphan. No education records. No relatives. And then came the line that made Leandro's heart freeze. Parents, Juliana Arrieta and Martina Funes, deceased in a traffic accident at KM 184, Route 3. Date, 3 years ago. Vehicle, owned by Salazar transport driver, Juan B., company employee, tested above legal alcohol limit. Released due to legal intervention. Leandro slammed the laptop shut. A cold shock shot through him like a blast of ice on bare memory. He remembered the accident. He had ordered the media blackout, paid hush money to witnesses, used lawyers to wipe the file clean. It was supposed to be buried. But no one had ever mentioned a surviving child. Tomasz. That boy was what remained of the crash Leandro tried to forget. A silent witness, not to accuse, but to return in a way no one could expect, to save his daughter. Leandro stood abruptly, pacing like a trapped animal. His chest tightened not from fear, but from guilt and emotion he thought he had forgotten. What if Tomasz knew? What if he came not out of kindness, but to avenge? What if it was all a trap and Leandro had walked straight into it? But then, he remembered. Tomasz's eyes when he bowed to Isabella. His voice, "I just helped her remember who she is." His smile, one of peace, not revenge. Tomasz didn't look like someone out for vengeance. The next morning, Leandro drove alone to the city's southern slums, a place he had never set foot in before. The air was thick with the stench of trash, smoke, and human sweat. Shacks made of tin, broken bricks, and tarp emerged like a separate world where even sunlight had to fight to survive. On a crooked wooden sign outside a crumbling house, messy handwriting caught his eye. Milka Karbustis, free healing. No promises accepted. Only gratitude. That name. Tomasz had mentioned it once. Leandro knocked. A raspy voice answered, "Doors unlocked. If you're looking for the doctor, come in." Inside was a poor but tidy room, scented with mint and rubbing alcohol. An old man walked out with a cane-white beard, eyes deep as wells. "You're Leandro Salazar, right?" the old man said with a gentle smile. "I knew you'd come." "Why?" Leandro asked, unable to hide his suspicion. "Because Tomasz said, you're not a bad man. Just someone who forgot how to believe in the impossible." In that moment, Leandro understood Tomasz hadn't come for revenge. He came to forgive. And maybe, to help him find his way back to what he had lost, his humanity. Leandro had never felt as small as he did sitting in front of the old man named Milka Karbustis. Even as a billionaire, a man who once led negotiations that made international banks bow, here, in this modest room with crumbling brick walls and the pungent scent of herbal liniment, he was just a man trying to reclaim a lost soul. Milka handed him an old notebook, its pages torn at the edges, the cover faded and yellow. "These are the notes I wrote down when Tomasz came to live with me after the accident." Leandro opened it. Handwritten scrawls came into view. Day 2, the boy says nothing. He just sits by the window. Hugs his knees. Doesn't move a muscle. But his eyes are still alive. Day 23, he managed to move a toe. I cried like a child. He just looked at me like it was nothing. But I knew something extraordinary had begun. Day 67, he told me I was wrong. It's not the body that learns to move. It's the heart that learns to believe it can. Leandro flipped through each page as if holding a sacred sutra. Each line was a quiet miracle, no theatrics, no grandeur, only blood, tears, grit, and an unshakable belief in something better. You taught him all this? Leandro asked, voice hoarse with emotion. No, Milka shook his head. I just lit the first spark. Keeping it alive, he did that on his own. But why doesn't he hate me? Why doesn't he resent me? Leandro blurted. I covered up the accident. I left him to wander like a stray, no parents, no protection. Because that boy understands something most adults never will, Leandro, Milka said, his aged eyes gleaming with youthful light. That hatred is a chain. And when he chose to forgive, he broke the chain on himself. Leandro couldn't speak. His heart clenched. How could a child understand something he had spent a lifetime running from? Then why did he come to my daughter? He finally asked. Because he saw the same pain in her eyes, the same pain he once carried. And when someone has been saved, they can't turn their back on those still drowning. The next morning, Leandro returned to the park, beneath the familiar jacaranda tree. Isabella was already waiting, still clutching the black stone, now a sacred object no one could pry from her hands. Tomasz arrived shortly after, a worn cloth bag slung over his shoulder. Inside were strange, makeshift tools crafted from scraps, wooden slats, soft cords, and crude padded sticks. These are therapy tools. Leandro raised an eyebrow. They're what I used when I taught myself to stand, Tomasz replied. Leandro wanted to laugh, to dismiss it, but he couldn't. Because when he looked at his daughter, he saw a light in her eyes, not a patient's gaze, but a warrior's, about to enter her final battle. Tomasz gently knelt and strapped wooden slats around Isabella's legs with soft elastic cords, forming makeshift braces. We're not going to walk today, Tomasz whispered. Today, we're just going to remind your legs that they exist. Isabella nodded. Sweat dotted her forehead, though the sun wasn't strong. She was tense, nervous but unafraid. For the first time in years, she wanted to try. Tomasz extended his hands. Now, close your eyes. Imagine you're standing. You don't need to believe you can walk. Just believe, you deserve the chance to try. Her small hand gripped his. A minute passed. Then 2. Then 3. And in the stillness, birds chirping, footsteps echoing across the plaza. Leandro witnessed what every doctor had deemed impossible. Isabella's legs moved. Not much. Just a slight twitch, a ripple across still water. But it was real. Leandro held his breath, unable to hide the tears rolling down his face. Isabella gasped. I felt it. Daddy, I felt it. Leandro rushed forward, pulling his daughter into a tight embrace. He didn't need MRIs, nerve tests, or medical proof. It was in her eyes, her voice, in every trembling cell of the child he loved most. And Tomasz? He stepped back, silently, like a shadow. A bringer of fire, asking for no credit. In that moment, Leandro realized. This boy hadn't come just to heal his daughter's legs. He had come to save Leandro himself. That night, in his grand estate, where the halls were lined with mirrors and marble, no one spoke of money, stocks, or corporate takeovers. Leandro Salazar sat alone in the library, fingers intertwined, staring into the abyss beyond the glass window. He wasn't reading. He wasn't sipping wine. On the table was a thick folder, not a contract, nor a financial report, but a file on Tomas Arrieta. He flipped to the last page. A single handwritten line in blue ink stopped his breath. Case resolved. No surviving relatives. Settlement, $1,200,000 USD. Avoided public litigation. It was his own signature 3 years ago. He had buried the truth like a stone at the bottom of a lake. But now, that stone had resurfaced, not to accuse him, but to set him free. Just hours earlier, he had seen his daughter's legs move. A movement the world's top doctors had sworn was impossible. And Tomas had done it. With a whisper. With imagination. With the patient love of a forsaken child. And the most incredible part, Tomas asked for nothing. No reward. No payment. No fame. Leandro looked at his hands. These hands had signed the termination of hundreds, steered the cruelest games of the corporate world. And now, they trembled. Because he didn't know what to do with a child so pure it was almost unbelievable. That night, he didn't sleep. Inside him raged a storm greater than any boardroom war. The next morning, the housekeeper knocked on Isabella's door to find her already awake. Unlike usual, she wasn't waiting for someone to wheel her to the balcony. She had already begun pushing herself slowly across the floor with her own hands, determination blazing in her eyes. "I'm training this morning," she said, as if making a declaration. Stunned, the housekeeper rushed to inform Leandro. By the time he arrived, Tomas was already in the greenhouse, a palace of light where even orchids were tended like royalty. Tomas stood among the flower pots like a contradiction: worn clothes, bare feet, sunburned skin. But here, where luxury met poverty, miracles were quietly blooming. Today, Tomas brought a new device, a small wooden plank on 4 wheels salvaged from a discarded cart. "I used this to practice balance," he explained. He gently lifted Isabella onto it. She tensed, biting her lip through the pain. Sunlight shimmered on her forehead like beads of holy water. "Push this cloth ball, with your right foot," Tomas whispered. The ball rolled just a few inches. But it was enough to silence the entire room. Leandro stepped forward, knelt beside her. "I saw it. You did amazing, Isa." Isabella panted, but her eyes blazed like fire. I don't want to stop." Tomas said, "The body is like a house. Even if it's broken, it can be fixed." Leandro felt his heart ache. A child who once lived on the street abandoned, alone, was now teaching his daughter about hope. Had he who had everything failed to teach her the same? After the session, as Isabella was wheeled back to rest, Leandro turned to Tomas. "Today, stay for dinner with us," he said. Tomas froze. "With the family?" "Yes. Not as staff. Not as a guest. As family." It was a strange dinner. No fine wine. No stock talk. Just 3 people, a long wooden table, simple vegetable soup, and soft conversation. "Tomas, did you ever have a family?" Isabella asked. Tomas looked down at his plate. "I did. But they left a long time ago." "Then, can you eat dinner here every day, from now on?" Tomas pressed his lips together. His eyes welled up, but no tears fell. He simply nodded. And in that moment, Leandro knew. This boy wasn't just helping his daughter walk again. He was teaching his family how to live again. If you've ever thought miracles only happen in fairy tales, try listening to the first laugh of a child who once believed she'd never stand again. But have you ever wondered what happens after the miracle? When faith begins to bloom, is there someone out there ready to crush it, simply because they can't stand light coming from a place they don't trust? That morning, in the sunlit greenhouse, Tomasz and Isabella were preparing for a new challenge. For the first time, she would attempt to walk not in her mind, but in her body. With legs the medical world had declared dead. Tomasz brought 2 walking poles fashioned from rough wood assembled from a broken table and frayed rope. Crude and clunky, nothing fancy. But Isabella's eyes lit up like she'd just received a birthday gift. Leandro stood a few feet away, hands clenched, but a smile tugging at his lips. He was no longer the distant father he used to be. He had begun to believe. Not in money. Not in promises from European doctors. But in a barefoot child whose eyes held a universe of faith. Tomasz placed a hand on Isabella's shoulder. When you're ready, just take a step. 1 step. Isabella nodded, biting her lip. Her hands gripped the makeshift frame. Her thin legs trembled, then moved. 1. Half a step. The entire room fell silent. Leandro held his breath. 2. A full step. Daddy, she cried out, a sound that rang like a bell in the chest of a father who thought hope had died. He ran to her, knelt down, and embraced her, trembling as if he had been the one to cross the abyss. You did it, Isa. You really did it? Tomasz stood silently behind them. No one noticed, but his eyes shimmered. Not with pride, but with relief, like someone who had helped a soul cross a raging river. But elsewhere in the mansion, not everyone was happy. In the kitchen, Anna, the housekeeper who had served the Salazar family for over 20 years, was whispering to 2 other staff members. This isn't good. The girl's getting too attached to that boy. And Mr. Leandro? He's like a man under a spell. But, the boy's just helping, isn't he? Helping? Anna sneered. Kids like that don't help without a motive. Believe me. I've seen too many act all sweet just to stab you in the back later. One of the maids hesitated. But Sir has accepted him. Accepted on the surface. But when it all falls apart, who'll pick up the pieces? I'm not going to let this family be ruined by some nobody from the streets. That afternoon, while Leandro worked in his office, an unmarked envelope was quietly placed on his desk. Inside was a copy of the accident report from 3 years ago, the one that took Tomasz's parents. The last line was underlined in red. Indirectly responsible, Leandro Salazar, settled with payment. Will the truth be exposed? Leandro froze. Someone inside the house was unearthing the past, not to heal, but to destroy. And Tomasz? He had no idea of the silent storm rising around him. He only knew one thing: today, Isabella had taken 1 step, and tomorrow, she'd take 2. Then 3. But if you think kindness is always rewarded, remember, not everyone can stomach a miracle born from poverty. So what lies ahead for Tomasz? Can light truly overcome darkness, especially the kind that humans make themselves? Don't look away now. Because what comes next is where faith is tested, and the past comes knocking with a price no one saw coming. Have you ever believed in something so deeply that you gave it your whole heart, only to wake up one morning and find someone quietly tearing it apart, piece by piece? That morning, it rained. Raindrops tapped quietly against the high glass panes of the greenhouse, blurring the soft sunlight. But inside Tomasz, another storm was brewing, silent, no thunder, no wind. Just a growing sense of dread. Isabella didn't appear like she normally did. She was late for their session. Tomasz walked the hallways, asking the gardener, the cook, but everyone avoided his eyes. Their responses were cold. Their stares full of suspicion. Eventually, he found Leandro alone in the reading room, soft golden light casting shadows across a face that looked 10 years older overnight. "Mr. Salazar," Tomasz asked gently. "Is Isabella not training today?" Leandro didn't look up. He kept flipping pages like he was trying to avoid the boy's gaze. "She needs rest," he said, voice heavy, like he hadn't slept all night. Tomasz understood immediately. It wasn't Isa who needed rest. Someone didn't want her to continue. "Is something wrong?" he asked, though the truth already pressed against his chest. Leandro finally looked up. In his eyes were layers more complex than any stock chart: pain, confusion, and fear. He placed the morning's envelope on the table, the one with the copy of the old accident report. Red marks like spilled blood. The past he'd buried in money and power, now laid bare like a dagger to the heart. I don't know who sent this," Leandro whispered. "But someone clearly wants you gone." Tomasz stood in silence. His eyes locked with Leandro's, not with judgment, not with anger, but sadness. "You think I came here for revenge?" "No," Leandro shook his head. "I don't think so, but I'm not sure anymore. Because this is too much of a coincidence." Silence fell between them. Only the soft tapping of rain on the glass remained. "I came here for Isa," Tomasz said, quietly and sincerely. "Not for you. Not for the past. For a girl who reminds me of who I once was. I don't need your forgiveness. But please, don't take away her last chance." Leandro's fists clenched. Deep down, he likely knew Tomasz never meant harm. But as a man betrayed by life itself, he also knew. Trust is the most fragile thing in the world. "The people in this house don't like you," he sighed. "They're afraid of you. They think you'll ruin everything." Tomasz didn't reply. He simply looked out the window, where soft light filtered through the purple orchids, casting pale streaks of melancholy. "So, I have to leave?" he asked. Leandro looked into those eyes that had seen death, endured hunger, watched parents vanish in a rainy night, and he couldn't answer right away. "You can stay, but under one condition." "What is it?" "You must stop all your methods. Let Dr. Beltran take over Isabella's treatment. And you can't be alone with her anymore." It wasn't exile. But it hurt more. It was denial, a statement that everything he had done, even helping Isabella stand still, wasn't enough to be trusted. Tomasz clenched his hands. Inside him, an earthquake. Not from insult, but from the fear of losing his last chance to help Isa move forward. "All right," he nodded. "If that's what it takes to stay." But in her room, Isabella was crying. She had overheard part of the conversation. "Tomasz won't be teaching me anymore." Her tiny hand clutched the black stone, the symbol of hope, as if letting go of it would cause everything to collapse. Elsewhere in the mansion, Anna, the one who sent the letter, was on a phone call. "It's done," she said. "Good," replied a cold male voice. "Make sure that boy disappears from that house for good. We won't let a street kid destroy the world we built." "You think the worst thing is being rejected?" "No. The worst is doing the right thing and being punished. Because people refuse to believe someone like you can be good. Sometimes, a child doesn't need to say anything for the world to be forced to listen. But there are also times when silence stretches so long, it turns into a blade cutting into the most precious things: trust, love, and the last chance to heal. The morning after the incident, the Salazar mansion was unusually quiet. There was no laughter echoing from the greenhouse. No sound of a wheelchair clattering down the marble hallway. No Tomasz. And Isa, the child who once laughed, who once lit up at the sight of her little healer, now lay in bed, facing the wall. She hadn't eaten since the night before. The black stone was still clutched in her hand, like a silent reminder that miracles can vanish at any moment, when grown ups don't have the courage to believe. Leandro entered his daughter's room with a cup of warm milk. He sat on the edge of her bed, gently brushing her hair. "Isa, I did this to protect you." His voice was soft, but even he knew, those words no longer carried the same weight. Because for the first time, her eyes didn't look at him with unwavering trust but with disappointment. "You protected me," Isa whispered. "By pushing away the only person who believed I could walk again." Leandro froze. "My love, I just wanted to keep you safe." "No." Isa turned toward him, eyes red. "You wanted me obedient. You wanted me quiet in a wheelchair so you could stay in control. But you don't understand, when Tomasz looked at me, he didn't see a broken child. He saw a warrior." Each word struck like an arrow. Not one of anger but sharpened by truth. Meanwhile, in a small room at the end of the hall, the one they had converted into a temporary shelter, Tomasz was quietly packing his few belongings: a worn cloth bag, a notebook of exercises, and a piece of rope once used to brace Isa's legs. He wasn't angry. Only feeling once again, that he had to leave before fulfilling his promise. There was a knock. Not Leandro. Not a housekeeper. It was Isa. She appeared at the doorway, pale but eyes blazing. "You're not leaving," she said, firm and clear. Tomasz was stunned. I promised not to cause trouble. They don't want me here." "Then we'll leave." Isa stepped forward, gripping the doorframe. "You and me. If the world won't give us a place, we'll go find one." "No," Tomasz shook his head. "I can't do that to you. You still have a father, a home. But you're the only one who taught me to believe my legs could move again. Everyone else just taught me how to accept being imprisoned in silence." Tomasz went still. He looked at the girl before him, not a fragile princess in a wheelchair clutching a teddy bear, but a blazing fire in a night of doubt. "We don't need to run away," came Leandro's voice from the hallway, hoarse, but steady. They turned. Leandro was standing there, no longer hesitant, no longer cold. In his hand was the threatening letter. Behind him stood Anna and two unfamiliar men. "You sent the file?" Leandro asked. Anna said nothing. One of the men stepped forward. "We just wanted to warn you that boy is a threat." "No," Leandro said firmly. "This boy is the last light in a home that's lived too long without faith." He turned to Tomasz. "If you still want to stay, then this will be your home." Tomasz stood frozen. He didn't know whether that word "your" was spoken casually, or deliberately. But it broke every wall in his heart. What if one day I fail? Tomasz asked. Leandro stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Then we fail together. But at least, we didn't give up." That night, For the first time in months, Isa slept soundly in her father's arms, not because she felt safe, but because she knew someone was finally protecting her dream. And Tomasz. He lay on his simple bed, the black stone Isa had left on his pillow now resting in his hand. He closed his eyes and whispered, "This time, I won't give up." Have you ever stood between two cliffs, one burning with the pain of the past, the other veiled in uncertainty but filled with hope, and the only thing holding you there was a promise to someone you couldn't imagine living without? That morning, the Salazar estate was no longer a place of suspicion and whispers. No one gave orders. No one spread rumors. In the stillness, they all waited. For one step. Isa sat in the greenhouse, her legs wrapped in soft cloth, gripping a wooden walker with wheels Tomasz had crafted himself. Beside her, Leandro was no longer a suited businessman, just a father, ready to catch her if everything fell apart. Tomasz knelt before her. His eyes, a lifeline pulling her from the last shadows of doubt. "You don't have to go far today," Tomasz said gently. "Just stand. Just once. For you. Not for your dad. Not for me. Because you deserve to believe in a miracle you created with your own strength." Isa said nothing. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath. No one in the room moved. Even the air held still. 1, 2, 3. She let go of the chair. Her body tilted forward. Her legs, once lifeless stones of despair, trembled, as if waking from a 3-year slumber. And then, Isa stood. No applause. No cheers. Only a gasp caught in Leandro's throat, like a piece of his soul had just been returned. Tomasz rose silently, walked to Isa's side, and reached out his hand. Isa looked at him. Nodded. She took one step. Just one. But it was an entire universe in the hearts of the three people standing there. Leandro covered his face. His shoulders shook. Not from fear, but because for the first time in his life, he knew. No amount of money in this world could buy the moment your daughter walks again on legs everyone believed were dead. That evening, they shared dinner under soft golden light. Not at the long table with 16 gold-trimmed chairs, but at a small table in the greenhouse, just enough for 3. Leandro stood, holding a piece of paper. "I have something to announce," he said. "I've filed the papers to legally adopt Tomasz." No one spoke. No one had to. Because Isa ran to hug Tomasz like he was the final brick needed to complete the little home inside her heart. Tomasz stood motionless. He stammered, "I don't know what to do." "Just stay," Leandro said, voice trembling. "And keep believing that maybe the past wasn't meant to haunt us, but to show us how to make things right with the rest of our lives." It seemed the story had reached its beautiful ending, but destiny is never easy on those who were once forgotten. 3 days later, as Isa was practicing steps in the garden, a sleek black car pulled up to the mansion gate. A man stepped out. Suit. Briefcase. The cold eyes of a legal representative. "I'm from Child Welfare Services," he said. "We received a report that an unidentified minor is living illegally in Mr. Salazar's home." Leandro frowned. "That child is my son. There are no official documents to prove that. I'm waiting for confirmation. We've filed the application. We also received a complaint that the child in question has a history of injury, vagrancy, possible psychological instability, and is unfit to be in an environment with a minor." Leandro's fists clenched. "Who sent this?" The man produced a paper, no signature, just scrawled words. I'm doing this to protect your daughter. Wake up, Mr. Salazar. Anna. That afternoon, Leandro sat alone in his study. The adoption application had been suspended. Tomasz was ordered to leave the house until his identity could be fully verified. He would be sent to a social welfare center, the same kind of place that had once discarded him like broken property 3 years ago. Leandro placed a hand on his forehead. Was he too late? Isa found out and screamed in despair. No. You can't let them take him. I'll go with him. Isa, you can't dash. Then save me, by keeping the one person who pulled me out of the darkness. At that moment, Tomasz stepped in. He didn't cry. He just looked at the two of them, like someone used to goodbyes. I'll go. As long as I know I still belong to this family, even if only in your hearts. Leandro gripped his shoulders. You're not going anywhere. If the law doesn't see you as my son, then I'll make them see it. And so began a new battle. No longer between illness and hope, but between what's right and what's wrong. That afternoon, the family court held an emergency hearing in courtroom number 3, a space that had seen countless custody battles, inheritance disputes, and bitter divorces. But today, there was no fight. No enemies. Just one boy standing alone before rows of unfamiliar faces, holding the black stone Isa had pressed into his hand before he left. Tomasz didn't wear a new shirt. He had no lawyer by his side. Only his honest eyes, and a voice as gentle as the wind. But each word landed like a hammer on the conscience. Your Honor, Tomasz began. I don't know how to prove I deserve a family. Because the truth is, I've never had anything to prove in my whole life. The room fell still. Since losing my parents, I've lived like a shadow. No one asked what I needed. No one called my name. I wasn't born to scare anyone. I just wanted to exist. Being with Isa wasn't a miracle. It was a chance for a child once abandoned to feel worthy of life again. A council member frowned. You know, kindness alone isn't enough to ensure the safety of a disabled child. Tomasz said nothing. He looked at that person not defiantly, not pleading, just with quiet sadness, as if he'd heard that same line 100 times before. I don't want to be a hero. I just want to belong to someone. Even if all I do is stand behind them every morning and push their chair. Outside, Leandro Salazar waited. He wasn't allowed inside the courtroom. He had no legal status yet as Tomasz's guardian. But he did something he'd never imagined himself doing in his lifetime. Standing in the rain, beside the boy whose orphanhood he had indirectly caused. He had hired the best lawyer in the country, but today, he didn't want anything scripted. He wanted to speak with truth. With regret. With the love he had locked away for years, alongside his countless bank accounts. At the end of the hearing, the doors swung open. Tomasz walked out. No tears. No smile. He simply said, "They're letting me stay, temporarily, during the investigation." Leandro embraced him tightly. "You're not staying temporarily anywhere. From today, this home is forever." That night, the Salazar mansion glowed not with crystal chandeliers but with warm paper lanterns that Isa and Tomasz had made themselves, now hanging all around the greenhouse, which had become a sanctuary for 2 reborn souls. Isa had taken 3 steps. No crutches. No one pushing her. 3 trembling, proud steps. Leandro watched, eyes misty. He was no longer a CEO. No longer the man responsible for a tragic accident. No longer the man holding himself together in a world of money. He was a father learning how to love, and how to apologize, with action. But no one knew that somewhere in the shadows, an old enemy still lingered. Anna, the former housekeeper, fired after the accusation, sat in a quiet cafe on the city's edge. On the phone was a familiar man's voice. Leak the story to the press. Dig up the accident. If Salazar tries to adopt illegally, we can force him to step down from his company. Understood, Anna replied coldly. I never believed in miracles anyway. And those who don't believe in miracles are often the ones most eager to destroy them simply because they've never felt one themselves. The battle wasn't over. But this time, Tomasz wasn't alone. He had a father willing to admit his sins, a sister brave enough to stand against the world, and a family, though threatened, who wouldn't lose him again. The news broke on a sunny Monday morning, ironic, given the storm brewing inside the Salazar household. Headlines: Billionaire Leandro Salazar illegally adopts child linked to tragic accident caused by his own company. Miracle or manipulation? The unbelievable story of a tycoon and a street child. Front page. Breaking news. Social media on fire. Public opinion split in two. Some called Tomasz a mastermind of emotional manipulation, digging into people's compassion. Others called Leandro a deranged tycoon trying to erase his sins through an innocent child. Only a few, those who truly believed, whispered quietly in their hearts, "Don't let faith be strangled by the noise of the crowd." At the mansion, Leandro dropped the newspaper, his hands trembling with rage. Isa panted in frustration, unable to understand why they needed permission to do something good. And Tomasz? He sat alone in the greenhouse, surrounded by white orchids. His eyes distant. Not angry. Not sad. Just tired. "What do you plan to do?" Leandro asked as he approached. "I think I should step back," Tomasz said softly. "No." Isa appeared at the doorway, standing upright on her still fragile legs. "If anyone needs to step back, it's the world. Not you." "But what if they arrest you?" Tomasz turned toward the man he now called father. Leandro smiled. "Then I'll hold my head high and say, I chose my son. And if that's a crime, I'll pay for it." That afternoon, the court reopened for another emergency session, this time, not to verify documents, but to evaluate the legality of the adoption under questionable ties to past harm. Inside, Tomasz sat on one side. On the other was the prosecutor, a child welfare officer, and Anna. Dressed in black, her face no longer cold but determined. She was no longer a housekeeper. She was the star witness. "I only did what I had to do to protect Isa," Anna declared. "That boy is the son of two people killed in an accident caused by Mr. Salazar's company. Who's to say he doesn't hold a grudge? How do we know this isn't a slow plan for revenge?" The court called on Tomasz to speak. He stepped up to the witness stand, small, alone, but standing tall like a warrior. "I didn't come for revenge. If I had, I could have exposed the accident from day one. But I chose silence because I didn't want anyone else to hurt. Especially Isa." His voice was calm, chillingly calm. "I once had nothing to believe in. But now, I have a dad. I have a sister. And all I ask is to be with them. Even if just for one more day. One more morning to see Isa smile." The room fell silent. A panel member asked, "If staying means Mr. Salazar loses everything, would you accept that?" Tomasz turned to Leandro. I don't want him to lose anything. But if that must happen, then I will go. Because I don't want anyone to suffer because of me." The court was speechless. And just then Isa walked into the room. No wheelchair. No one helping her. She took 3 steps. Trembling, but proud. "My name is Isabella Salazar. And I've come to testify." The judge asked, "Do you have something to say?" "Yes," Isa said, breathing deep, her hand clutching the black stone. "If my father loses everything because of Tomasz, then I want to leave with him. Because my miracle didn't come from a doctor. Not from therapy. It came from his eyes, the first person who believed I wasn't broken, just asleep." The room was stunned. We keep asking if he qualifies to adopt. But has anyone asked, do I want him to be my brother? The answer is yes. And if that breaks the law, then I'll fight until the law changes. The hearing ended with no verdict. The court postponed judgment for further investigation. But in the hearts of everyone there, the ruling had already been made. The winner wasn't the law. It was love. That night, Tomasz received a handwritten note. "I was wrong, Anna. I thought the world had no miracles. But I saw one in Isa's eyes, and in the way you never blamed me, even though I betrayed you. I will withdraw the complaint. And if you can, please forgive an old woman who let fear bury her kindness. Miracles don't always come with fireworks. They come quietly, like an embrace in the rain. A hand reaching out when you think you're lost. And sometimes, the greatest miracle is forgiveness." Have you ever wished a hug would never end? Wished a moment where no one doubted you, where you didn't have to prove your worth could stay frozen forever, like a photo between 2 heartbeats? Since that day in court, the Salazar mansion was no longer silent in the same way. No longer the silence of fear, coldness, or slammed doors blocking out truth. But the calm after a storm, where everyone walked a little softer, spoke a little kinder, and looked at each other with new eyes, of understanding, of compassion, of admitted mistakes. Tomasz no longer slept in the hallway corner. Leandro moved him to the upstairs room, the one once meant for a son he thought he'd never have. The room had a wide window overlooking the garden, where bougainvillea bloomed in the morning wind. One afternoon, Leandro walked in and found Tomasz stringing a rope across the window frame. "What are you doing?" he asked, puzzled. Tomasz turned and smiled, the smile of a boy who once was orphaned, but never lost faith. "I'm hanging up a dream line," he said. "So each morning when I wake, last night's dreams won't blow away in the wind." Leandro laughed, a soft, honest laugh. How long had it been since his heart stirred at something so innocent? "And what dream did you hang up last night?" Tomasz nodded. "I dreamed Isa was running. Not just walking, running. Like the wind." And it was true. Since that hearing, Isa never sat still again. She did everything she could, from walking with a cane, to hugging walls for balance, to standing on one leg just to test her limits. "I don't want to be a symbol of Tomasz's kindness," she told Dr. Beltran. "I want to be my own miracle." Beltran, the man who once doubted everything, now silently supported. He studied Tomasz's methods. No longer dismissive. And sometimes, he even stayed late after sessions, jotting notes about things he had never learned in any medical school. But when the light shines too brightly, shadows grow darker. One evening, just as the family was preparing for dinner, Leandro's phone rang. An unknown number. "Mr. Salazar." A cold male voice answered. I'm the internal investigation assistant to the Salazar Group board. We've received a formal petition to review your leadership for alleged personal misconduct during the adoption process. Leandro froze. You're temporarily suspended from your position as chairman of the board for the next 60 days. The call ended. No explanation. No chance to defend himself. That night, Leandro sat alone on the porch. No lights. No music. Just him and the dark. Tomasz saw him, brought out 2 cups of hot cocoa. You already know? Leandro asked. Tomasz nodded. Do you regret it? He asked softly. Leandro closed his eyes. Yes. I used to think that title was the only thing keeping me standing. Then he looked straight into the boy's eyes. But then I met you, and realized you were the one holding me up all along. Tomasz bit his lip. I'm scared that I'm the reason you're losing everything. Leandro shook his head and smiled. No. You're the reason I finally know what's worth keeping. Those words were a silent vow between 2 people once on opposite ends of pain, now choosing to walk forward together. Not to forget the past, but to change the future. But that future was about to be tested. A new article leaked. Exclusive: orphan boy uses fake miracles to exploit sympathy. An old, edited video Tomasz holding the black stone, saying, "This is a miracle." Just one sentence. Stripped of its context, its meaning. Now twisted as proof he was a fraud. The news spread fast. TV panels opened heated debates. Who is this boy? Why are we believing this fairy tale? This might be the biggest emotional scam of the year, preying on a grieving billionaire. Even former supporters went silent. Leandro received a warning from the company's legal team. Either keep Tomasz, or keep your reputation. You can't have both. That night, Tomasz wrote a letter. He left it on the dinner table. Clear and simple. I will leave. Not because I'm afraid, but because I don't want the people I love to suffer because of me. If one day a miracle returns, I hope it's for you and Isa. Your son, though undocumented. Forever yours, Tomasz. And he left. No luggage. No goodbye. Only a small stone left behind engraved with the words, "Believe in what you've seen, even if no one else does." There is a strange kind of pain not from loss, but from the one you love leaving just to protect you. The next morning, Isa woke to birds chirping outside the flower garden. Everything looked the same, white curtains swaying, soft light dotting the floor from the window. Except the chair beside her bed was empty. Tomasz was gone. She looked around. On the wooden table, his handwriting, rushed but familiar. "No," she whispered. "You can't leave." She struggled out of bed, feeling along the walls like in every training session. But this time no Tomasz beside her to cheer her on. No hand waiting to catch her fall. Only emptiness. Leandro entered the room just as Isa collapsed by the door. He rushed to her, panicked, as if losing her again would be more than he could bear. "He's gone," Isa sobbed, clutching the letter Tomasz left behind. "Why did you let him leave? Why didn't you stop him?" Leandro held her, his heart shattering. "I just found out too, my love," he whispered. "I'm hurting too. But Tomasz didn't leave to run away, he left for you." Isa broke away from his arms, dragged herself down the hall, calling out, "Tomasz! Where are you? Don't go. I need you." I didn't even get to say thank you. But only the cold stone walls echoed back. 2 days passed. Isa said nothing. She didn't eat. She didn't smile. She just sat in the greenhouse, their classroom. The wooden table still held the dirt-smudged prints of Tomasz. His chair still slouched in its lazy tilt. And the black stone once always in his pocket now lay in her hand. Dr. Beltran came to check on her. But Isa refused to train. Without him. I don't want to walk. Leandro stood quietly outside the door, his chest tight. He knew. If Tomasz didn't return, nothing and no one could pull his daughter out of the darkness again. That very night, Leandro quietly left the mansion. Left everything behind. He went looking for his son. No bodyguards. No chauffeur. Just a father once again learning to humble himself before life, to reclaim the one thing he couldn't afford to lose. He retraced every place Tomasz had ever mentioned. The old park bench. The hospital's rusted awning. The dead tree where Tomasz once buried a box of memories. He asked the bakery vendor. The shoe shine kids in the plaza. Have you seen a skinny boy with messy hair, counting pebbles on the sidewalk? The one who gives candy to kids, even though he's got nothing himself. I saw him yesterday, at the train station. Looked like he was headed south. Leandro ran to the station. The train was about to depart. Leandro sprinted along the platform, clutching the copied note from Tomasz, his heart's map. And then, he saw him. Tomasz stood by the last car, carrying only his worn bag and eyes dulled of light. Tomasz! Leandro shouted, voice cracking. You can't leave. Tomasz turned. Not startled. Not afraid. Just, quiet. I left a letter, Dad. Leandro slowed, wind cutting across his face but not the chill inside his chest. I read it. But I don't accept it. I've lost too much already. I can't lose you too. But I only bring trouble to your life. No. Leandro roared. You're the only thing that's made my life worth living again. Tomasz's tears finally fell. I just wanted to stay, but I was scared. Leandro climbed the train steps, his voice trembling. If I have to choose between reputation and you, I'll throw my name under the strain. Because one child taught me more than every consultant I ever hired. Tomasz collapsed to his knees, sobbing. I want to stay, but I'm afraid. Leandro pulled him close. I'm afraid too. But the more scared we are, the more we must hold on. Don't let fear choose your future. That night, father and son returned home. When Tomasz opened the greenhouse door, Isa jumped up, eyes wide with disbelief. Brother. Tomasz smiled. I'm back. Isa ran, her legs still shaky, but her heart strong as stone. She threw her arms around him, sobbing. Don't ever leave again. Don't leave me. Tomasz knelt, placing his hand over the black stone in her palm. I won't leave. Because now I know. Home is where someone believes in you. Even when you've stopped believing in yourself. There are doors from the past that we thought were sealed forever. But one day, a soft knock echoes again, not to remind, but to test whether our heart is ready to forgive. 3 weeks after Tomasz returned, the Salazar mansion felt like it had awakened from a long slumber. Isa could now walk 6 steps without needing support. They were no longer fearful shuffles like before, but joyful steps, carrying laughter, and a hope once shattered, now stitched back together by Tomasz's small hands. Leandro had also officially submitted his resignation from the board of directors. I'm not leaving the company because I lost, he told his son. but because I no longer need to win to feel worthy. I've finally found what I searched for all my life. A family that hugs each other every morning and doesn't hide their pain. Tomasz smiled, a smile soft as the morning breeze. But deep within his heart, a scar still hadn't healed. On a Friday afternoon, as sunlight slanted through the bougainvillea trellis, an old silver car pulled up to the mansion gate. The man who stepped out froze everyone in place. A gaunt middle-aged man, graying hair, deep eyes. It was the very driver who had caused the accident that killed Tomasz's parents. Leandro recognized him instantly. He walked briskly to the gate. "What are you doing here?" Leandro asked, voice tense. The man bowed his head. I didn't come to cause trouble. I just want to see the boy, just once. I haven't been able to sleep for years. I quit drinking. I went to rehab, did community labor. I just want to say I'm sorry. It's not me you need to apologize to, Leandro replied, stepping aside to reveal Tomasz. The boy stood still, holding a black stone. His eyes weren't filled with hatred, only the quiet sorrow of someone buried alive under the ashes of memory. "I was the one driving that day," the man said, voice shaking. "I was drunk. I lost control. I couldn't look in the mirror for 3 whole years. Until I saw your face in the newspaper. And I realized, if I didn't face you, I'd live like a dead man." Tomasz said nothing. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He didn't run. He simply walked forward, one step at a time. Then, standing in front of the man, the one who had stolen his childhood, he said, "You know, for 3 years, I hated you. I imagined what I'd do if I ever saw you again. I wanted you to hurt like I hurt. But now that you're standing in front of me, you're no longer the monster from my memories. You're just a man, who lost himself." The man broke down in tears. "I don't expect forgiveness. But I'll forgive you," Tomasz whispered. "Because if I don't, I'll always be trapped in that accident with you. And I don't want to live in that accident anymore. I want to live in the present. Here. With my dad. With my sister." The man collapsed to his knees. Thank you. Tomasz helped him up. "Go. Live a good life. And, tell your story. Don't let anyone else suffer in silence." That evening, the family ate dinner in silence. No one spoke, until Isa asked, "I don't understand how you could forgive the man who killed your parents." Tomasz smiled. "Because if I couldn't, how could I ever teach you to stand again after your own fall?" Isa nodded, her eyes filled with something new. Admiration, trust, and a glimpse of maturity. A week later, a letter arrived at the mansion. From the Ministry of Health. Subject: Proposal for establishing a rehabilitation center for children with special circumstances. A public-private partnership with the Salazar Foundation. Leandro's eyes widened. At the bottom of the letter was a signature. Proposed by Tomasz Arrieta, a boy who once learned to walk alone, now wants to teach others to walk with both legs, and with their hearts. Leandro turned to Tomasz, who was sketching a greenhouse layout at his desk. "What are you planning to build?" Tomasz looked up and smiled. "A home. Not for me. But for the kids who've never had one. If you were once a broken-winged soul, would you dare take to the sky again? Not because you're sure you won't fall, but because you believe someone will catch you if you do." A clear morning. The sky stretched endlessly. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, painting golden tones on the ivory walls of a newly opened building. The sign at the gate read, "The Rebirth Center, where fallen children learn to rise again." Below it, in smaller print, "Founded by Tomasz Arieta, who learned to walk not with legs, but with hope." The courtyard echoed with laughter. Children of all ages and backgrounds, some in wheelchairs, some on crutches, some fresh from surgery, filled the space. But every pair of eyes carried the same thing, light. On a simple wooden stage, Tomasz stood silently for a long moment. Below him, Isa, now walking confidently without any aid, beamed with a radiant smile, as if tears had never known her face. Behind them stood Leandro. His salt and pepper hair and simple suit no longer signified a billionaire. Only a proud father. Tomasz picked up the mic. His voice wasn't loud or showy, only warm, like early spring sunlight after a long, weary winter. "Hello everyone. My name is Tomasz. And I used to be a child with nothing. Except a black stone and a memory too painful to tell." A gentle breeze swept by. The white flag bearing the center's emblem fluttered like a bird's wing. "Today, I'm not here to speak of miracles. I'm here to speak of faith. Something I once thought was a cruel joke played by fate." He looked into the audience, locking eyes with a boy who had recently lost his leg. A boy staring up at him with bright, tear-filled eyes. "We don't get to choose how we're born. But we do get to choose how we go on living." Applause rose. Tomasz only gave a soft smile. He pulled the black stone from his pocket, the one that had traveled the entire journey with him. "This is the stone I held when I first met Isa. I told her it had magic. But the truth is, it has nothing. Except one thing. It reminded me that every bit of strength I ever needed was already inside me." He bowed his head, raising the stone high. "And today, I pass this stone on. To anyone who still doubts themselves. Keep it, or throw it away, that's your choice. But remember, the most precious thing isn't what's in your hand. It's what's in your heart when it dares to believe, one more time." After the speech, the ribbon-cutting ceremony was modest but deeply moving. Children flooded into the therapy rooms like bees to a garden. Some jumped. Some touched the rehab machines like they were new toys. Tomasz sat in a quiet corner of the yard, near a bougainvillea bush. Isa came and took his hand, without a word. Then Leandro joined them, sitting beside his two children. His eyes gazed into the distance. Who would have thought, from a courtroom, we'd end up here, surrounded by children learning to move forward again? Tomasz smiled. Real miracles don't come when everything's perfect. They come when we still want to save others. Even while we're bruised ourselves. Leandro nodded. He pulled a paper from his coat. "This is the official registration. From now on, you're Tomasz Salazar, both legally and in my heart." Tomasz looked up. His eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. He simply bowed. "Thank you, Dad." That night, the Salazar mansion, now a temporary shelter for homeless children receiving care, was alive like New Year's Eve. The kitchen glowed. Music filled the halls. On the lawn, Isa was teaching a little girl how to balance, in rubber sandals. Tomasz stood on the balcony, watching the moon rise. He whispered, as if sending a prayer skyward. "Mom, Dad. I used to think I was just a child left behind. But today, I'm the one staying behind to welcome other children. I'm not afraid anymore, Because I know home isn't where we're born. It's where we choose to stay. To love unconditionally. Thank you for joining us. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share. What did this story teach you? How might it shape the way you live or forgive? Your voice matters. Reading your reflections brings strength, healing, and inspiration to us all. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us create more stories that awaken the soul. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.